I'm Sergio Veleda. I'm Urban Mobility Director in WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. Today we will discuss about policy options and economic instruments for sustainable urban mobility. As you know, public transport is in an important crisis. The main characteristic of public transport is its efficiency of moving large numbers of people. This paradigm is being tested by quarantine measures, and just right now, when some countries around the world are leaving the quarantine measures, we are facing another crisis caused by COVID concerns. People are concerned to be contaminated in the public transport, and the economic crisis has the effect to reduce demand on public transport. So we have a lot of challenges to continue to manage and to bring efficiency and to maintain the operational capacity for public transport. Let's remember that we have a lot of externalities on public transport and on private car using. More than 1.350 million people die in road crashes annually. Air pollution contributed to 7 million deaths worldwide in 2012. Transport accounts for 14% of global emissions and only sector growing steadily. Up to 10% of GDP value of time lost in congestion. So if we lost operational capacity to manage public transport, people will shift from public transport to private cars, to private motorized travels, and it will increase the negative externalities on our sector. But actually, this crisis is not only about COVID-19. Before the virus appeared, we were observing that we were losing passengers in different parts of the world. Metro, bus, and rail systems facing declining ridership, rise of ride sharing, lack of investment, poor quality of service, all contributors to this situation. And it creates a very bad cycle. Financial constraints precede social isolation measures, and now it is exacerbated. And when we start to lose passengers, we start to lose revenues. When we start to lose revenues, we reduce the investments and we reduce the level of service. So when we lose a passenger in public transport, it's hard to recover this passenger. But at the same time that the COVID-19 raised this crisis, exacerbated this crisis, it shows for the whole society the essential role that the public transport has in our society and in our cities. By serving essential workers in healthcare, emergency services, food service, and the other sectors, public transport has become a service not just for riders, but for everyone. And this concept is very important. It's important to understand the financial measures that we have to increase the financial sustainability for public transport. Let me say, in general, cities finance public transport using two instruments. In general, it's much more common that cities pay the service using the revenue from the fare, from the public fare. So the riders are responsible to finance the service, only the riders. When a city asks money only for the riders, this city is saying the only beneficiaries of the public transport are the riders. As they are the beneficiaries, they should pay for it. Some cities are more sophisticated. they aggregate the revenue from the fare and they pay some subsidy. When a city decides to pay from the taxpayers' money, they transfer this public money to transport sector. This city is saying exactly, the beneficiaries of public transport is not only the riders. They are beneficiaries and they contribute to pay. But as the whole society is the beneficiary of the public transport, they should pay for it, because each citizen in cities obtain benefits from public transport. But we have much more benefits from public transport. We reduce congestion, so each citizen in city can move quicker because public transport is running. We reduce pollution, we avoid diseases for everyone. We reduce fatalities in traffic, so you are safer. It doesn't matter if you are rider, if you use public transport or not. So we need to understand that externalities. The public transport generates a lot of positive externalities. At the same time, if you decide to travel, your decision about your travel impacts in the society. On this slide, it's a very good study from Research Discourse Media. This study was conducted in the Canadian cities. We can see the externalities. If you decide to go to your office walking, and it will cost $1 for you, for the society it will cost only 1 cent of dollar. It's cheap for the society. If you decide to go by bike and you pay $1, society will pay 8 cents. It's cheap again, but a little more expensive than walk. But if you decide to use public transport and it will cost $1 for you, for the society it will cost $1.50. It's more expensive. But let's see if you decide to go by car. If you decide to go by car, driving your big car, your beautiful car, and it will cost $1 for you, the society will pay $9.20. So we can see a lot of negative externalities. This money from the public sector is paying for the pavement, is paying for the health system to protect people with brief disease. It will pay the fatalities. In Brazil, 60% of the intensive therapies in hospital are occupied by traffic victims. If we lose riders, we will lose revenue, but our public transport has a lot of fixed costs. Ridership down by from 60 to 90%, but 70% of fixed costs remaining during this pandemic crisis. It means financial crisis for public transport and the risk of decreasing access for residents, because a lot of operators are going to bankruptcy. A lot of public different authorities, they don't have money to support public transport, and they are reducing the offer. It will reduce the demand, and people will be not able to access their opportunities and jobs, or they will shift from public transport to private cars. We need to work to avoid this situation and to build a strong, sustainable financial system to support public transport. It means that we need to coordinate efforts by different levels of government. In general, the national government, they don't pay enough attention for urban mobility, but it's strategic. It's essential for a country to support urban mobility to support cities to maintain the operational capacity of public transport. During this crisis, it means it could be transfer money, but in a long term, we need to coordinate efforts. Money is important, but the national government has the possibility to invest much more than cities, and much more to bring technical assistance, to bring much more information, capacity building for cities to manage better the public transport systems. And they could coordinate at the national level, they could coordinate the principles for sustainable urban mobility plans. So these plans should consider and should incentivize cross-coordination between different levels of government and engage local residents and the main stakeholders to develop these plans to reach success, to produce very good outcomes in these plans. It is essential to engage the stakeholders and the civil society, the commuters, the users of public transport. They are not organized in no-profit organizations, for example. So city government should pay attention for riders to design good solutions for public transport. To finish my presentation today, I want to talk about a toolbox that local authorities can manage to improve financial sustainability for public transport. It's good when city decides to subsidize public transport, but we have much more possibilities to finance public transport. Some cities around the world are adopting congestion prices. I showed you that slide that reviews how expensive for cities is private cars travels. If we have a sector that produces a lot of negative externalities, it makes a lot of sense to ask for this sector to pay for these externalities. The congestion price do it in a very good way. New York will start with this measure next year. They will transfer the money that they will receive from the drivers that will access the Manhattan Island. They will use it to retrofit the metro lines. Low emission zones where we will not allow for cars, not allow for motorcycles to transit in this area. It will reduce the demand for private cars and it will incentivize people to use public transport. Park pricing is essential. When someone parks its car in a street, this person is appropriating a public space for private use. It's not fair for the society. So a very good policy is to ask price to park cars in cities. And another important measure is to priority buses and reshuffling public space. For example, exclusive lanes. And please, don't forget about integration.